Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, power sharing in Northern Ireland is teetering on the brink of collapse this weekend. Deadline after deadline has passed with no deal between the two main parties and also with no sign of a breakthrough on the horizon. So there's a very real chance of direct rule from Westminster being imposed. So potentially not the ideal time, you might think, for the new shadow Northern Ireland Secretary Owen Smith to ease himself into the job. We can now speak to him from his home near Cardiff. Oh, sorry, I'm looking in the wrong place there, Owen Smith. I am going to look to you straight down here. Thank you for coming on the show this morning. There's lots to talk to you about your Northern Ireland brief, which we'll come to. But of course, many people will remember you as the man who challenged Jeremy Corbyn last year. You said that his leadership at the time was a cataclysmic failure, leaving Labour teetering on the brink of obscurity. Well, it doesn't quite seem that way after the election, does it? Why did you get him so wrong?
Well, I think in keeping with a lot of people in this country, my view, Sophie, was that Labour wasn't going to get close to winning with Jeremy as our leader. I've said previously I was clearly wrong about that because we did very well at the election, gained 30 seats, almost 13 million votes. I wasn't anticipating that, and Jeremy in that regard absolutely proved me wrong and proved many people wrong. And we are now in with a chance of winning an election. The Tories are clearly riven right now. They could collapse at any moment, and Labour needs to stand ready to form a government.
If you had won that leadership election, do you think you'd have done as well as Jeremy Corbyn did?
I don't know. I hope so. I hope I might have even got us to win, but I can't know that, Sophie. Look, I think Jeremy has clearly galvanised young people in this country. We've seen that not just in the election, but since. I met people during the election who hadn't voted ever, certainly people who hadn't voted for a long while, who felt Jeremy was speaking to and for them, and that Labour was speaking to and for them. And I don't think any of us can argue with that, and therefore I think he's earned the right to try and get Labour into power and earned the right to be our next Prime Minister.
Now, one of the things that you were perhaps most passionate about during that leadership campaign was Brexit and the UK's relationship with the EU. I just want to read to you a couple of things that you said in March. My view is absolutely crystal clear that we should be members of the single market. And then you said, when we leave the single market, we will have a lesser level of benefits than we currently enjoy. But when you had the chance to vote in favour of staying in the single market this week, you abstained. So did you sell out your principles for a front bench job?
No, I think my view hasn't changed. I still believe that Brexit is a bad decision for us as a country and is going to leave us worse off. That's my personal view. But Jeremy Corbyn's asked me to do a very important job on the front bench for Labour in Northern Ireland at a point at which Northern Ireland is central to British politics, and therefore I think my duty is to get on and try and do that job and to work as part of as I say, a Labour government in waiting.
At the same time, though, you have said some pretty strong things about that single market membership in the past. So I do just want to stay on this for a moment, because you said that it was the biggest gut fib that the government is telling right now, that we're going to be able to enjoy the exact same benefits outside the single market as we currently enjoy. I mean, that is Labour's position now. So why is it a fib when the government says it and not a fib when Labour says it?
Well, my view, Sophie, is that we are going to find out over the next couple of months that the government can't deliver on what they promised, which is to give us the exact same benefits as we currently enjoy in the single market and the customs union. And at that point, I think the country may well find itself looking down the barrel of a Brexit that is going to leave us worse off, and some of the arguments that some of us have made in the past and will continue to make within the Labour Party, respectfully with our colleagues, may well feel a bit more relevant then.
So in other words, you must disagree then with the leadership position. The leadership, for example, John McDonnell, Shadow Chancellor, calling on the government to negotiate a deal that retains the same benefits the UK has as a member of the single market. The Labour manifesto that pledges to negotiate a Brexit to retain the benefits of the single market. You think that's impossible, that's not going to happen?
I think it's for the government to prove that that can happen. I think they are the ones who've said that they are going to give us exactly the same benefits as we currently enjoy, and they are the ones who need to prove that they can deliver that. Labour has said we want to make sure the jobs are prioritised, we want to make sure that investment in this country is safeguarded, and I think all of those things are not irreconcilable with the view I hold. And I will continue to hold those views and to make that argument within government.
It's easy, though, isn't it, just to throw the whole thing onto the government, that they've got to prove it, that it's all in their court. But actually, a responsible opposition that...
Not really, they're in power.
A responsible opposition that says that you are a government in waiting, that you're preparing for another election, don't you need to get this sort of stuff sorted out as well?
Well, I think you've articulated, Sophie, already what Labour's position is. You know, it's for investment and jobs to be safeguarded. It's for the government to deliver on their promise of exact same benefits that we currently enjoy. And I think we've got to hold their feet to the flames on this. You know, Labour isn't in power yet. Labour wants to be in power, but crucially, it is the Tories who've led us to the brink in respect to Brexit. It is David Davis who's making such a horlicks of the negotiations. And it's over the next couple of months when we really get down to the nitty-gritty of what Brexit is actually going to look like. Are we going to see the extra money for the NHS, all the lies that were told? Then we will, I think, be able to properly hold the government to account and show the country what Brexit might mean.
Let's talk about Northern Ireland, because deadline after deadline has been missed to try and form a government there. How concerned are you about the future of power sharing?
Very, because it's very clear to me, talking to all of the parties in Northern Ireland, that while some progress has been made and negotiations are not happening today but will be ongoing, as I understand it, tomorrow, there's still a big gulf between the parties, and there is still a big gap in terms of that crucial ingredient, trust, because whatever the issues on the table, unless the parties trust one another to work together, or at least have got sufficient transparency as to the other's motives and intentions, then we won't get power sharing back up and running. That's the lesson of history in Northern Ireland. I was there as an advisor when we were trying to do something similar, when direct rule was reintroduced back in 2002 to 5, and it is a very, very difficult job to rebuild trust once it's been lost.
You talk about the gulf between the parties. If there isn't an agreement, then the government has a choice: order another election or impose direct rule again. Which choice would you make?
Well, I think either choice, to be honest, are pretty ugly choices for Northern Ireland, so I'm not sure I would urge James Brokenshire to take either of those choices as you outline them. If you get into direct rule, it's very easy to introduce it. It's the devil's own job to get out of it. And another election, well, if we think we're sick of elections in GB, they are truly sick of them in Northern Ireland, so I don't detect any appetite for that. I think the Secretary of State is going to need to find a third way of some sort, but I think crucially he's going to need to get his government to redouble their efforts. The truth is, the Tory party, I think, viewed Northern Ireland as a problem that was solved. They haven't concentrated on it over the last 7 years. David Cameron barely went to Northern Ireland. Theresa May, I think, has only been once to Northern Ireland. She's hardly met with the political parties. They need to pull their finger out, frankly, and offer a bit more energy into all of this if it is going to be resolved, because without that, maybe it does require the Prime Minister to become directly involved. Without that sort of engagement, then history again tells us it won't be resolved.
Do you think the relationship between the Conservative Party and the DUP is impacting the situation in Northern Ireland at all?
I don't think anybody can say but that is happening, because all of the parties in Northern Ireland who aren't the DUP worry that the DUP now have extra influence. They have the ear of the government, and I don't think anybody can argue against that. I've heard the Tories trying to spin that this is an entirely separate process in Westminster and in Stormont, but the reality on the ground is that it is making it more difficult for trust to be restored. Now, I hope that can be surmounted. I hope that the parties can get past that. But for the Tories to say that that isn't an issue, frankly, is being a bit disingenuous.
OK, Owen Smith, thanks very much for coming on the programme today. I've been getting